Hello and welcome to State of the Earth, the podcast from the University of Exeter's Graduate School of Environment and Sustainability, where we explore the issues shaping our planet's future and take a look at the ways in which we can make a positive difference. Today we're joined by Professor Brendan Godley, a world-renowned marine biologist and conservationist who also happens to be the director of the graduate school here in Cornwall. And today we're going to focus specifically on Brendan's work protecting sea turtles, which has had a global impact. So welcome, Brendan.
Hi, nice to be here.
So just to start at the beginning, really, your research has taken you to some of the most remote parts of the world to study and protect sea turtles. But could you give us a bit of background into how you got started in that field and what drew you to sea turtle conservation in the first place?
Yeah, sure. So I originally trained at Glasgow University as a vet, but I did an intercalated zoology degree. And while I was an undergraduate student, there was quite an active organisation called the Expedition Society. And I won a place on an expedition to Trinidad in 1989. And I was supposed to be working on birds when I went there, but it turns out the wildlife department preferred that we did a survey of sea turtles, of leatherback sea turtles. So way back in 1989, I saw my first sea turtle, which was a leatherback, crawling up the beaches of Matura Beach in Trinidad, and it kind of got under my skin a little bit. And so in 1991, I returned as the group leader with a larger group to study sea turtles, and that went very well. And in 1992, Dr. Annette Broderick and I were invited to Northern Cyprus to do the first survey of sea turtles there. And we've discovered significant populations of loggerhead and green turtles there, which led to Annette and I both doing our PhDs on aspects of the project there. And that project's been running for 32 years and has continued to be run by the local Society for the Protection of Turtles, with a large body of students from the University of Exeter, BSc, but also some MSc projects, PhDs, but perhaps something that we're most proud of, large numbers of Turkish Cypriot students that now participate every year. And we visit every year, and a nice little story was that we were there in June this year, and the students called us on the radio to say that a special turtle had come up the beach. And so this was a turtle that Annette and I had tagged in 1992, 32 years previously. And she was still coming back every 2 or 3 or 4 years to breed. And although we were only in our early 20s when we tagged her, and we're now no longer in our early 20s, the turtle hadn't changed a tiny bit. And as it turns out, we would have recognised her because she had an unusual scoop pattern on her shell. So we were able to recognise her from her flipper tags and a identity chip that she has under her skin. But actually, we would have recognised that turtle if we just walked along the beach. So it's a nice little story, and highlights that these animals can live a very long time, because they're probably about 20 when they start to breed. And the maximum duration that we could record is 32 years thus far. So undoubtedly, that record is going to be broken in subsequent years.
Oh, well, that's so cool. Now, obviously, you've just mentioned all these different places. So your work has spanned global turtle populations, and you've led initiatives in the Caribbean and Africa, as well as Europe. Based on all of your experience, what are some of the most severe threats that sea turtles face globally? And also, could you share a little bit about how your research has helped to mitigate some of those threats?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, we work very closely with people in many different countries. And sea turtles are, quote unquote, endangered because their numbers were driven to tiny proportions of their historical past by direct exploitation for food as Europeans colonized the New World, but also for trinkets and jewelry. So tortoise shell is actually traditionally made from hawksbill sea turtle shells. So because of direct exploitation, they were very much reduced. But people started working on sea turtles in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and as a sort of conservation ethic really started to develop, the conservation of sea turtles and the massive exploitation of them was largely stopped through the 50s, 60s, and 70s around the world.
Yeah.
Then there was the advent of CITES, which is the Convention of Trade in Endangered Species, which meant that animals captured in one country couldn't be very easily traded as a commodity. And what happened is that domestic legislation in many of these countries led to protection in much of their range. But in that same period of time, global fisheries have increased massively, both in number, but also in the relative levels of industrialization. And undoubtedly, unintentional capture of sea turtles in fisheries is now the #1 threat in the world, whether that be in trawls or gill nets or long lines. But also in the background, the traditional loss of habitat and degradation of habitats because of coastal development, damaging of seagrass beds and coral reefs, are also a proximate concern in many places. And then on the horizon is marine plastics and climate change. And we research all of these things, whether to put in mitigation now for current threats or to at least understand the situation going forward. So if I think about bycatch as an issue, one of the projects we've been working on in multiple countries is working with fishers, both to try and encourage them to release turtles when they capture them, and get involved in the research, but also the use of lights on gill nets, which then dissuades turtles from being caught in the net, but doesn't negatively impact the fishery.
Oh, so fish aren't impacted by lights?
No,
So
the lights that are used, the studies that we've done look and have shown a reduction in the capture of sea turtles, but not a reduction in the target catch, which is essential if you're going to get fishers to adopt a technology for bycatch mitigation. And of course, in most cases, sea turtles aren't sought as a prey item by the fishers. It actually creates them a lot of work and damages their gear. So ideally, they don't want to capture them in many cases. The other things that we've been doing is using sea turtles, showing key habitats that can be subject to marine protected areas and beach protection, and also understanding the impact of artificial light.
Just to follow up, you made a comment about plastic pollution there, and is it Emily Duncan? I can remember reading about one of your PhD students doing some research about the amount of plastic that was found in sea turtles.
Yeah, so sea turtles, as well as being important for themselves, they've also become a bit of a poster child for the marine plastic issue. And when I started working on sea turtles in the 90s, and I was still very much veterinary orientated, I'd be looking at postmortems of sea turtles, and many of them had plastic in their intestines, but they had died as a result of fisheries. So we'd focused on the fisheries and protecting the nesting habitats. But we're basically finding that between 50 and 100% of turtles are impacted by plastic. And Emily's work has been excellent. We've looked at microplastics, and almost like sea turtles can be considered a barometer of microplastics. We found them in every single animal of every single species in all ocean basins.
My God.
And then for the large plastics, sea turtles have been proposed as a bioindicator for the levels of plastic in the environment. And we've done some work in Cyprus on green and loggerhead turtles to show the utility of that going forward. As it is in many cases, the plastic is still an incidental issue, but one of the studies Emily did on small pelagic turtles is very important in the fact that she studied like baby turtles, but not just brand new baby turtles, but maybe in their first or second or third year out in the ocean when they live out in the open ocean in the currents. And there they converge on these current zones, but that's also the area where the microplastics, the larger, sharp, pointy, nasty microplastics are converging like a soup. And these little turtles are eating these big bits of plastic, half half a centimetre that are all pointy, and undoubtedly this is a point of concern, and the fact that the evolution of sea turtles has them aggregating in the same place as this plastic. And you can imagine if a turtle's only 5 or 10 or 15 centimetres long, and it's eating a piece of plastic which is 5 to 10 millimetres with jaggy edges, that starts to slice up its intestines and undoubtedly is causing a lot of these baby turtles to die. And so it's a difficult section of the population to work on, but it's certainly one that we'd like to do more on, because undoubtedly there's maybe the potential of what we would call an evolutionary trap there for the sea turtles out in the open ocean.
Brilliant, thanks for expanding on that a little bit. Just slightly connected to that, I wanted to ask, sea turtles are often described as a keystone species, but for people like me, could you just explain what does that actually mean, and why is their protection so crucial for the broader health of marine?
So a keystone species is one that, because of its action in the ecosystem, it's thought to have a keystone, like the keystone in a building, a key role in the habitat. And so for hawksbill and green turtles, these are the two that have been studied the most. Undoubtedly, hawksbill turtles, they predate on sponges, which stops sponges over competing with corals, and probably also feeding on algae, which stops over competing with corals. And then for green turtles, which feed on seagrasses and algae, they're thought to have an important role of keeping down the rotting biomass on seagrass meadows and perhaps helping them flourish a bit more. They also, by bringing nutrients from one place to another place onto beaches, are thought to nourish dune habitats by bringing important nutrients that help stabilizing vegetation to flourish. And at natural or semi-natural levels where, predators can kill female turtles and loads of fish can eat baby turtles, they also have an important role in essentially feeding predators.
Right.
But as well as that sort of keystone species role, a really important thing is their role as a flagship species, which for marine conservation, so that people like turtles, and they're like a totem for the marine conservation issue, whether it be for sustainable fisheries or marine plastics or creating marine protected areas around seagrass beds or protecting coastal environments, both for human use and for biodiversity. So I think they're an important flagship species as well as perhaps a keystone species.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, right at the start, you mentioned this turtle in Cyprus that came back after 30 years. And obviously one of your major focuses has been tracking the migration of sea turtles. Could you talk a little bit about how the technologies changed the way that we approach turtle conservation, and have there been any surprising findings from tracking them?
Yeah, well, I mean, before I talk about satellite tracking, we can track and tag the individuals either with an earring like flipper tag or an identity chip like you get with your pets. And so that 32-year-old, or 32 years since we first tagged the turtle, she has an identity chip. So the identity chips were an important jump in our ability to study them long term and see their reproductive output and their survivorship, because they don't fall off like flipper tags. So that's one technology. But another technology we use are satellite tags, where a small radio transmitter is glued to the shell of the turtle, and that sends messages to space, which are picked up by a satellite, which effectively, it's not the same as GPS, but effectively most tags give a location that's not quite as accurate, but pretty accurate in anywhere in the world. And so we started doing that in Cyprus and Ascension Island. In Cyprus, most of the turtles we found go to North Africa, and then actually we found that a large number of them go to a special area of Egypt, which is an area which is subject to human management, which has been good for sea turtles. That's Lake Bardawil on the Egyptian coast. So it's able to find where these animals live for the majority of their life and connecting countries in the conservation story. So essentially, for the Cyprus turtles, we're looking at Cyprus, Turkey, Egypt and Libya mostly. But so we've been able to do that descriptive view and confirm things that might have taken 50 years or 100 years to study with flipper tags. In other places like Ascension Island, where there had been long-term flipper tagging projects, we confirmed that indeed from Ascension Island, most of the turtles swam all the way to Brazil and up and down the coasts of Brazil.
Oh, wow.
We've done that in multiple countries. In fact, the Ascension Island turtles are quite interesting in the fact that they leave their foraging ground in Brazil, and it probably takes them about 6 weeks to swim the Atlantic. And then they find a mate, and it takes them a month to produce their eggs. And then they'll, every 2 weeks, they'll crawl up the beach and lay a clutch of eggs, and then go back and rest and produce another clutch of eggs, and then swim all the way back.
Oh my
another
God.
6 weeks across the Atlantic. So in total, a duration of more or less 6 months, all without eating a bite. So all fasting. So for anybody who does intermittent fasting, think about a sea turtle who does it for 6 months. So that's been, you know, an interesting study population to look at. Then we've combined our studies with those of other people and looked at the locations where turtles were foraging, and we actually found that they were perhaps unsurprisingly disproportionately found in marine protected areas, which made us think, oh, well, then maybe what you do is, if there's an area which you haven't got protected areas, and you don't know that much about what's going on, if you actually get some turtles and some seabirds and get them all to track away themselves and show the areas that are most important to them, those might be the best places to create as marine protected areas, obviously balancing with the needs of people nearby.
Yeah.
We've also tracked individuals to areas that were hotspots of fisheries or likely industrial development that might or might not happen, or defence activity. And then these tags, they don't just tell you where they are. If you buy the slightly more expensive models, they also have dive computers on board.
Oh, wow.
So we were able to track turtles to North Africa, where it gets very cold in the winter, and obviously the turtles can't go any further south in North Africa, and it's too cold for them to eat. So they basically go into a sense of a sort of, not a torpor, but a kind of hibernation, where they'll dive to the bottom and they'll come up to breathe between 2 and 4 times a day for many weeks in a row. So just basically conserving their energy, not using much energy, but waiting on the temperatures being warm enough for them to be active enough, and perhaps their prey or their seagrass or algae to start growing more and be good to feed again. So I think actually we're in the Guinness Book of World Records, and it's I think it's 10.2 hours for the longest breath-holding dive of a vertebrate, and that's for a turtle nesting and foraging in North Africa in the winter.
Oh my God. Just before we move on, just one quick question that's probably quite obvious to you, but not to me. Are they different breeds of turtles? So you said there's obviously the turtles in Ascension Island that cross the Atlantic, and then the turtles in Cyprus who stay much more, although they travel, they stay much more locally, or are they the same?
Well, in Cyprus, it's green turtles and loggerhead turtles, and in Ascension, it's green turtles. But in other places, we worked on leatherback turtles or olive ridleys, you know, and hawksbills actually. But but they're actually often migrating long distances, because it's like where is good to feed isn't necessarily where it's good to breed. And so even though there's a cost in going all that distance, like for instance, green turtles often nest on oceanic islands in high densities. And of course, although there are sharks and fish that will come around the island to feed on the turtles and the hatchlings, on small islands, typically medium-sized mammalian predators can't exist for a long time.
Right.
So you end up being predator-free on the island, but you have predators coming around the island. So, but then where is good to forage isn't necessarily a good place to breed, and so that's why you get this migration between the two different kinds of resource.
Gotcha. Thank you. Now, your Marine Turtle Research Group, which you run, that collaborates with partners all over the world, lots of NGOs and the IUCN. How important is this international collaboration when it comes to protecting not just sea turtles, but any endangered species?
Oh, it's absolute. I mean, even from taking a step back before protecting them, even to study them. I mean, ultimately, protection is only going to happen when it's instigated and carried out by people that live locally and are part of the infrastructure there. But even to do the research that informs that, it's absolutely essential to have partnerships. And we only work in countries where we're invited to do so, and we're usually working with the local government or an NGO that's active in the country, and including local coastal communities or fisher folk around the world. And that makes a massive difference to the utility of the work and the pragmatic execution of the work. But also just from a personal point of view, it makes it much more fun and enjoyable. And you live and work with local people, learn languages and customs, and get a deeper appreciation of the situation. And many of those people from the countries in which we work have come and done MSc and PhD studies with us, and then we carry on working with them into the future. Or we send some of our students that are UK-based people or internationally to work with them, and they send students to come to do masters with us and sometimes PhDs.
Yeah, I was going to ask that actually. I mean, obviously on the Cornwall, University of Exeter's Cornwall campus, we offer master's programs in conservation and marine ecology and biodiversity. And so I was going to ask how your research feeds into the curriculum of these programs, and what is it that students gain from being involved in some of this work?
Yeah, well, about a third of our students in doing those kind of master's programs go on to do PhDs, and another third NGOs, and another third go into consultancy or government conservation work. And so doing rigorous projects is good for everybody, all of those situations, because it's the underpinning of everything, good policy intervention. But because we've networked with people around the world, we end up working on problems for which people want the answers, and that adds a lot more validity to the work, and it engages more people. Also, students get to interact with researchers and managers out with the university, so diversify their experience. And then, having worked with these diverse stakeholders, it changes the way that we as academics view ways of working, disseminating information, and pushing forward to actually having real world impact, and actually have the change, not just the scientific paper, but actually have the marine protected area created or the law changed. And it clearly works nicely, and our students are now out there, former students out there working in all the conservation bodies and agencies and doing research. And in fact, I think just in the biology department alone, I think 6 of the members of staff are our former master's students. So that's quite nice. As we've grown, we've been recruiting our own graduates.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you mentioned this a little bit, but obviously field work's an essential part of any learning experience on these programs. Could you share anything about the opportunities students would have to participate hands-on in any of this marine research?
Yeah, sure. Well, just in your free time in Cornwall, you can go for a walk and see dolphins and seals and whales and bluefin tuna. So just by being out and about at the weekend in beautiful Cornwall, you can see loads of stuff. But all of our biology programs, particularly in the master's level, have fieldwork and field courses either in Cornwall, Ellesmere, Scilly, Scotland, Kenya, or the Maldives, depending on the program and the version that you choose.
Yeah.
And then also a number of our MSc research projects have a field component. But I would note that a good number are also lab or desk-based, and that allows, within a relatively limited period for a master's project, diversification of your skills, and often publication in a peer-reviewed journal, which is a great bonus for all careers, especially those aspiring to more academic positions. And we're just currently, the students have got a big booklet out now of all the projects that have been offered by staff, and so they can then come and be part of our research groups for the second half of the academic year after Christmas, once they've been on their field trips.
Now, I just want to end with a couple of kind of summary questions, I suppose. So first of all, just looking ahead to the future, what do you think are the biggest challenges for sea turtle conservation, particularly, as you mentioned, in the face of climate change and habitat loss?
Yeah, and population growth and consumption growth. I think sustainable fisheries, as the world population grows, is a concern, but we are making progress on bycatch and more sustainable fisheries in many other aspects. There's real momentum behind the 30 by 30 initiative, which seeks to have marine protected areas across 30% of the ocean by 2030. So I think those are positives. And then, I mean, one of the things as you get older and you're training students, that you are reminded about how fantastic, energetic, optimistic, and clever these students are. And that actually gives me some cause for optimism that there are more and more brilliant young minds coming through wanting to make a difference for the environment. So there are challenges, but there are also more and more people engaged in the whole mission for marine conservation than ever before.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I was going to say, obviously asking about challenges, but also what gives you hope? I mean, in the last 30 years of your research, what success stories would you like to share that have given you hope?
Well, I think firstly, the sea and its creatures has capacity for recovery, and perhaps more than on the land, because land is isolated from other bits of land, but the ocean is connected. Yeah. I mentioned the work in Ascension and Cyprus, and in both places, the turtle populations are increasing as a result of conservation efforts. So it's not futile. Conservation can have positive dividends. As I said, never before has there been so many people engaged in marine conservation, and I think the sustainability sector has to be the biggest growth sector for the future. So, don't let anybody put you off if you want to be coming and doing some studies of environment, because it's actually probably the most important suite of careers for the future of mankind.
Yeah, definitely. And final question was for anyone out there who might be considering a career in marine conservation, or maybe even interested in studying with us, what advice would you give them?
Right, so if you really want to get into the sector, doing an MSc can be a great investment, but it needs to be the right MSc for you in the right place. So by all means, take a look at ours. We've been doing it here on what was a new campus for over 20 years now, so it's well tried and tested and successful. But however, you must choose the program that really is fit for you in a place that you think you'll be happy. I mean, that way you'll be more productive and more likely to succeed. So I would definitely try and visit your prospective campus, meet some current students and lecturers. And, as I mentioned, actually some of our lecturers are our former students, so that's a double whammy there. So, yeah, I think, but shop around and make sure you make the right choice for you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So thanks, Brendan, so much for sharing your insights today. I think I've overrun my time slot slightly, but it's clear that your work's had a huge impact both on the sea turtle conservation, but also inspiring next generation of conservationists, particularly people who later come to work with us. So for all our listeners, we'll be back next month with a new episode. But In the meantime, be sure to check out our website for more details about our marine research. And if you're considering study, then obviously take a look at our graduate school programmes in Cornwall, where you could join in all this critical work being done to protect our planets, oceans and wildlife. Thank you very much.
Thank you.